Hello everybody and welcome to the end of the week. I know it has been a trying time for a lot of people out there, but I hope we're all looking forward to the weekend and have a good weekend of games and relaxation planned. I wanted to do a video today to look at a game that I didn't really think was worth covering on digitallydownloaded.net, mostly because it has already been talked about so much over so many years. It is an old game now. You probably recognize it just from the footage on the screen that you're seeing. And I am, of course, talking about Myst. So, realMyst launched on the Nintendo Switch this week, or last week, really recently anyway. And I did take the opportunity to grab it. I played Myst a lot as a kid, really great to deal a lot. And I've always been a fan of it over the years. And I know that in more recent years it has become a more controversial title, I guess, in the sense that a lot of people don't really see it. And a lot of the stuff that really hooked people in with the original Myst has lost its appeal to a great extent. But I have a strong nostalgia for the game, and I wanted to see how realMyst held up, because while I have played the original Myst quite a lot, I haven't actually played realMyst at any point. So I just wanted to see, firstly, whether the game itself holds up as an experience, and secondly, whether realMyst really did much for it. I guess I am playing it in a new way for the first time, which is it has been interesting, let's put it this way. So while I haven't actually scripted out a thing to talk about, and I'm just having a very casual chat about the game, I thought I would share some thoughts as I have been playing it a little bit. It's kind of easy to forget today because the gravitas of the game has largely left, but Myst was once a very big deal indeed. And it was a big deal for a couple of key reasons. Firstly, it had a very dense approach to its puzzles. It is an adventure game, so back in those days things like Zork and the text-based adventure games were really big. Myst was a game that was in that tradition as a gameplay concept, but it was also a particularly challenging puzzle game in that it didn't really give you too much to work with. You really had to puzzle through everything in this game yourself, and you had to do it through visual cues. So back then, a lot of text games that people were used to relied heavily on text, as the name suggests. Even the graphical ones, like some of the Zorks that people were playing, still had a very heavy reliance on text as part of the experience. Myst kind of got rid of a lot of that and instead turned everything into, I guess, a giant visual puzzle where you needed to really pay attention to your surroundings, you needed to poke and prod around, and you needed to really make sense of a world that was not willing to just hand out information to you as you played. And it was difficult. I do remember the first time I played through Myst, I really relied on a guidebook that came with the game. I was quite young at the time when I first played Myst, and I found it very obscure and very challenging, but also very intriguing, and I think that's what really hooked people in with Myst. It has this kind of dark core to it, which takes a long time to unravel, and as you start to understand the mysteries of Myst Island and the other worlds that you visit, and start to get a sense of the real plot that was going on behind the scenes, there's an intensity to this game which was really, really appealing and really intriguing. So that's, I guess, one area where Myst was very popular, who really caught people's attention. The other area was, of course, the graphics. So back when Myst was a big deal, when it was kind of a pinnacle of video games in many ways, it was because it had this kind of photorealism impression in terms of the graphics. Now, back in those days with Myst, you weren't able to, it wasn't free moving. It was like you were clicking through a series of photographs to go from one scene to the next. realMyst has changed it around by turning it into a 3D world. It's the same game, but you have full kind of free exploration of the world. It's certainly not an open world game because the worlds are so tiny. They're really just kind of puzzle boxes in a sense. But that free roam really does change, I guess, the experience. And to be honest, I'm not such a big fan of it. Now that I've played realMyst for the first time, I think I prefer it with the photos, and I think I prefer clicking through that because it had that kind of it had an almost scrapbooking feel to it, and it really allowed you to indulge your imagination in terms of setting the scene as well. And Myst, because it was very, it didn't rely on text in any way, it really relied on you finding, I guess, the inspiration, finding a way to indulge your imagination in other ways. And for me, that filling the gaps in between each photo that you would click through was certainly where that came from. So I'm not a big fan of this 3D remake. I think it's fine in terms of how it looks, and it certainly captures the essence of Myst perfectly, perfectly reasonable. But yeah, it doesn't have that kind of I want to say literary. It doesn't mean literary in terms of the sense of using words, but it had a bookish appeal when it was just photos that you were clicking through, that the 3D version here has kind of missed. As to how it holds up as a game, it has been long enough since I last played Myst that I've basically forgotten all the puzzles. And so I've been thrown right into it, and I've had to relearn this stuff. And I do see the weaknesses of the game now. It's not just that the puzzles are obscure. If they were just obscure, that would be fine. But a lot of them have, I guess, a sense of logic which isn't immediately apparent, and that's a slightly different thing. If you're going to give people a puzzle, and a good example of this, it would be the Witness, which it bears some kind of similarities actually in terms of the way that it does world and progression. If you look at John Blow's The Witness, and then you look at this one, The Witness always had very understandable sets of rules for solving the puzzles, whereas this game really relies on a lot of trial and error a lot of times. And while there is a certain satisfaction to solving those puzzles in the end, it can be a very frustrating process when you're not even quite sure where the puzzle you need to solve next is. And I do think that Myst has, without that guide, especially as a kid, I would never have finished Myst anyway, so I probably would not remember it as fondly. But without a guide, this game does not have the kind of qualities of a good puzzle game. And because, I mean, if you think about it this way, if a puzzle game kind of almost requires that you have access to a guide in case you do get that stuck, then it's not really a great puzzle game. There should always be a sense that you're just not getting through the puzzle rather than not understanding, what you need to do next. There's a very fine line between these things, and the Myst is a game that I think developers have learnt from in the years since, but as a game itself, it's a little bit archaic today. What has absolutely captured my imagination again is the atmosphere and the storytelling, like I kind of alluded to beforehand. But as a kid, I was right into the storytelling of Myst. I actually even went and bought some books. There was a series of books that were written that were basically there to enhance the world of Myst and also to turn it into this kind of cross-media property. And those books, being what they were books. They did give you a much better sense of, I guess, the world building, the characters, and all that kind of stuff. So, as a complement to the video game, I got really into those books, and I was right into the whole fiction and the fantasy and the lore of Myst. Because what it is, if you haven't played Myst before, it's basically these people have the ability to write worlds, and the worlds they write can be populated, they can have people, they can have all kinds of things going on. And there's a whole lot of questioning about the morality of doing so, what it's like to be effectively a god in your ability to manipulate these worlds. And yeah, it has a really kind of it's got a really dark atmosphere, like I said before. It's also got atmosphere that kind of looks at the role of religions and all that kind of stuff as well, and it's fascinating. And I've always found Myst quite fascinating, and I still find it fascinating playing it again here. I just find it a very fundamentally interesting experience. So yeah, as a Switch game, it's obviously very old, it's very archaic, it's not really for everybody, but it is actually almost, if you're interested in the history of video games themselves, this is actually worth looking at. So thanks for watching this short video. Have a great weekend, everybody. We will see you at the next one. Let me know what you think about Myst if you've played it before. Let's have a chat in the comments. Otherwise, please do like and subscribe, and please do consider backing me on Patreon because all of that helps. See you next time. Thanks.